So I have a restaurant called Wurst Hall in San Mateo. It's a German beer hall, and we do a chicken schnitzel there. When we were developing that recipe, there's a couple things we found. We tested all kinds of breading, and what I found was the most consistent and the easiest is to take panko and just grind it in the food processor.
That's what I did. Yeah. Because you're looking for a very fine breadcrumb. That's the biggest difference is you're not looking for real texture from it. And in fact, in your New York Times recipe, you have sifted a couple times. I did not do that. I'm not going to. But with the food processor and the panko, I got to a fine powder very quickly, and I felt like it really has that hallmark texture. Like it really felt
it gives you that sort of even browning and that kind of puffiness without like a ton of jagged edges that you get from katsu or something else. But yeah, finely ground panko I find is easy, which is great because then you don't have to have multiple types of breadcrumbs at home, and you can make multiple types of fried chicken. And then the other important element was making sure that you go basically straight from the breadcrumbs into the fryer. We experimented with because in a restaurant, oftentimes what you're trying to do is prep as much in advance as you can so that when someone orders something, you do as little work as possible without sacrificing quality. And so we were like, okay, well, we can pre-bread our chicken, and then all we have to do is pick it up and drop it in the pan or drop it in the fryer. But as it turns out, with that particular style of breadcrumb, it works okay if you're doing something like panko. So I know your recipe, you say you can bread it in advance and then fry it the next day, and that works well with panko. With the really finely ground breadcrumbs, they end up sort of absorbing too much moisture, and so you get really, really spotty browning if you don't. So getting them fresh from the breadcrumbs straight into the hot oil, I think, is a real key step if you want that puffiness and that evenness also.
That makes sense because with mine, I'm trying to get all the moisture off the chicken.
Right.
I want to. So you can rest it for. In fact, most of the time you're trying to get breading that isn't going to fall off the chicken. That would not be like a good Italian American or Milanese if the crust was flaking off. But with the schnitzel, you actually want that bubbly. So it makes sense that if you waited too long, you would lose that different texture, which is a little soft underneath, steamy inside, and then the full crisp on the outside. I wouldn't say I got great ripples, but how important for schnitzel is the depth of the oil? Because we can talk about there's pan frying, and then there's shallow frying, and then there's deep frying. And for different things, it really matters. I've read that for the schnitzel, the deep frying really matters. I also should make clear that I used neither lard nor
clarified butter.
I was like, this is a Tuesday. We're not doing this. However, I have seen Austrian chefs on TikTok and whatever, where they'll just take regular cooking oil, something neutral that goes high heat, and they'll add a couple tablespoons of butter to it for flavor.
Right,
and I
you
did
can do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know how much the butter came through, but
how deep was your oil?
I was probably just doing half an inch.
Yeah. So with schnitzel, you want to go a little bit more because you don't want the weight of the cutlet to be pushing the breadcrumb coating down into the bottom of the pan. So you want it basically enough oil that it can float. And and with schnitzel, really the one of the key steps to it is as it's cooking, and especially after you flip it, that you kind of shake the pan back and forth, and you're trying to get waves of hot fat to go over the top of it, and that also helps with the puffing. If you've ever made pomme soufflé, or if you've ever made arepa de huevo, puffy, any kind of food that puffs up, the more you can kind of move it and agitate it and encourage it to pull away from itself, the puffier it's going to become. So schnitzel, there's this idea that you want golden waves of fat going across the top surface of it, and so that it can puff away.
Can you just spoon the oil from the pan over it? Because that's what I was doing.
Yeah, you can.
Because I have a gas flame, so the idea of splashing oil into there just feels very stressful. If it's got a rough 20, 30-year-old cast iron skillet and then an old gas burner, it just feels like something bad's gonna happen. So I was spooning it over as I did it to try to get it to puff. And I would say on the larger pieces, it had a nice Shar-Pei rumple to it. The smaller ones did not, but the kids loved it. It came out great. It was really good. I love it with just a little squeeze of lemon on top. It was just perfect and a nice salad. Oh, I think I made German potato salad too, although it's an Austrian dish. But I had bacon and I had potatoes, so that's what I made.
Nice.
But it came out really neat. But it was interesting that you said it doesn't have to be vodka, it could be water, because I think some people would be like, vodka, I'm not going to use that.
I don't keep vodka at home anymore, so I don't.
Yes.
Yeah,
I was going to ask
don't.
you what you would use today. Water, probably.
Yeah, water would work fine. It's a sort of it's a minor difference. It's something that if you've got the vodka or the hard liquor around, it's going to make it a little bit puffier, but you don't have to do it. Some people will even like use a spray bottle with water, like to kind of mist the chicken, and that works. But I just use a brush.
But right after you wash the chicken, it's basically wet. Like if you're going to rinse the pieces when they come in the package, like I mean, it just seems like just because I hate that pat
Wait a
and dry
minute.
step.
Are you a chicken washer?
So I'm not always, but sometimes when you get that package of the cutlets, it looks like there's like some blood or other stuff in there, and it looks really ick to me. And so then I'll rinse them.
And so you wash it and
not about
splash that chicken
cleanliness.
juice all
It's
around
about,
you.
No. Well, okay, no. I'm going to, and then I'm more concerned about like those paper towels that you're blotting with that have now like you literally have like salmonella paper towels everywhere. So to me, a clean rinse down the sink is a little easy, but it depends on what. It's not to me that I think the chicken is getting cleaner. It's literally more of a contaminants, like there's just or flavors in there that might be from like leftover from the processing,
or like some freezer burn stuff.
Anyway, we're all going to be vegetarians by the end of this one. I'm going to be a pescatarian. Wait, I already am one. Sorry.
Have you seen Mangchi's chicken katsu recipe? No. Or maybe it's a pork katsu recipe. So this is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum as far as puffiness of the coating goes. What she does is she puts her cutlets down on the cutting board, and then she kind of whacks them with the back of a knife a bunch to kind of scruff up the surface, make them like all, kind of like mangle the surface essentially of the cutlet before she does the standard breading, with the idea that by mangling the surface, you're getting sort of more nooks and crannies for the bread to adhere to, and so you get a breading that is really strongly adhered to. Like it becomes, what Ed Levine calls the cosmic oneness you get between the coating and the chicken.
We should have gotten Ed on today. I bet he would have a lot of opinions on this. I would have trusted him.
Ed has lots of opinions about it. Yeah, I'm sure he has opinions on chicken cutlets, particularly chicken cutlet sandwiches, I'm sure.
I just want him to hear cosmic. I just want to hear him say cosmic oneness as often as possible. So I know I haven't seen that, but I'm absolutely fascinated now by this idea of fresh katsu crumbs, and I'm gonna have to like go in an internet rabbit hole. Also on electrocuted breadcrumbs. So let's.
There's fun videos on that, but the fresh panko, it's not even like a really widely known thing. But if you go to like some of these katsu houses, you'll see they get like bags of fresh breadcrumbs delivered to them daily, and there are some videos where you'll see how this katsu is made in these restaurants, and it's a big tub of like real fluffy fresh breadcrumbs.
Couldn't just tear up some Wonder Bread for a similar effect?
You could grate Wonder Bread probably, but Wonder Bread I think comes out too gummy. I think you really want shokupan, like Japanese milk bread, which has a sort of sturdier, flakier texture to it.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, because you've got like, when I think of people making fried chicken cutlets at home, I think the biggest hurdle is always the frying. And it's not just like the whatever health component of it. I think it's that we're all just stressed out about oil and like what to do, like how much to buy, what kind to buy. You're not supposed to dump it down the sink, how to get rid of it. It's like a lot of headaches. But before we get into the disposal, there's
shoot it at the end.
Frying.
Shoot the leftovers.
Well, do you remember Fatberg?
No, what is that?
It was like 2019. It was like all over the news. It was in England. Like they had this giant sewer clog, and it was like things that people were flushing, and it was like fat. It was like, I don't know. It's like 221 town, like Fatberg was like blocking the sewage. Like it was like this whole mess because people were flushing and pouring down things that they were not supposed to, largely like fats and things which you're not supposed to do. And so every time,
so you're saying that me shooting the leftover fat after I'm done frying something it could be causing some of my plumbing issues.
We might. Well, you're on a boat, right, when you're cooking? So
I meant my internal plumbing issues.
I don't want to talk about your internal plumbing. I'm begging us to change the subject as usual.
My boat does in fact have plumbing issues. The whole dock has plumbing issues right now. And the fun thing about
your fault?
Sure hope not. But the fun thing about living on a floating home is that when there are plumbing issues, you don't call a plumber, you call divers. to come in and go under the dock like there's diving plumbers who service houseboats in Seattle.
It was already really expensive to call it a plumber. I can't even imagine what it would be.
Well,
if they also
luckily
have
I
to have
rent.
scuba
So.
gear. Scuba gear. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I was making that face again where I'm like begging you to change the subject, and my friends who are watching the video clips are now noticing it, and I feel like somebody needs to do a supercut of all the times. So I'm like, Kenji, please stop this line of conversation.
Oh no,
there was a bunch
my
of those
friends
faces
also,
in the meatball episode, except they're encouraging you.
I tell my friends, there are certain things I know that make Deb a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
Mainly sex and poop.
That is not fair. I have clarified. It is not the topics. It's that I don't trust you to know where to stop with the topics. It is a you thing, not a me thing.
I stopped at combining the two.
I'm always like, this is funny. I love, like, it does not need to be classic talk, but at the same time, I'm like, he's just going to keep going. That's when the face comes in, when I'm like, he's not going to stop.
Well, I'm not going to stop till you make the face. That's the.
Okay, so make the face sooner while it's still funny. Got it. Noted. Noted for the new season. Okay, so we've got shallow frying, which I think of as just like, not shallow, we have pan frying. You know, I put a puddle of olive oil in a pan, I heat it up, I fry an egg. That's pan frying.
Mm-hmm. So like then a couple tablespoons of oil most.
Exactly.
Right? Anywhere from like a teaspoon to a couple tablespoons of oil.
Exactly. Just to keep it from sticking, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Then
like
you've got shallow frying, which you would call maybe like half an inch.
Yeah, which is I think,
inch.
what you would do for, say, meatballs or for most of the time when you're doing chicken cutlets. Yeah, I would do shallow frying where it looks, it's like enough that you can like tilt the pan back and forth and it sloshes around, and then when you lay the food in it, you have to carefully lay it away from you so that the oil doesn't splash up. And then by the time all the food is in the pan, it's deep enough that it comes all like more than halfway up the sides of the food, and some of it even probably spills over the top of it.
That's usually what I'm looking for when I'm frying at home. But deep frying, it's going to be fully submerged. I'm picturing like a deep fryer, like for French fries or something like that. Like it's going to be completely not touching the bottom or the top of the oil.
Right. Which really is sort of the ideal way to fry virtually. Like anytime you're shallow frying, I feel like you're doing it because you don't want to deep fry.
Yes.
Because with the deep fryer, you're frying evenly from all sides, and you also don't have to worry about the food sort of touching the bottom of the pan, which gives it
Picking
uneven
up old
heat.
crumbs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So deep frying is the ideal way to fry most foods that are going to be shallow fried. However, we shallow fry because it's convenient.
Because we're home
it's more
cooks.
Convenient. Yeah.
I don't have gallons of. Also, I know people who have deep fryers, but it's generally like not something most people have at home unless you're really passionate about fried chicken or something like that. I also don't find the machines to be that great. Like a skillet, you can do it in.
Well, the advantage of a deep fryer, whether you're at a restaurant or at home, is that the heating doesn't come from the very bottom, right? Like the heating element in a deep fryer is elevated off the bottom of the fryer, and so when so if you're deep frying in a Dutch oven or you're deep frying in a wok or a skillet, as breadcrumbs or flour falls off, it sinks to the bottom and it gets to the hottest part of the pan where it then burns, right? Because it comes into contact with the bottom. But a fryolator or like one of those countertop deep fryers, because the heating element is elevated from the bottom, when breadcrumbs and stuff fall off, they sink to the bottom, but they don't burn and they stay down there. And so a deep fryer will just keep your oil fresher longer, and it'll also sort of prevent that whole issue of getting sort of burnt flavors or getting burnt crumbs onto your finished food, at least to some degree. It's not perfect, but
because people always ask me if you can okay, so we've talked about pan, shallow, deep. I guess we can get into the air fryer separately because it's such a completely different mechanism. It's just induction oven baking, but people are going to ask, so we want to answer. Meet people where they are with their questions.